Prof.
Sion's on.
Chione's on?
You have to be quiet. Don't wake up the kids.
You think they can hear it? They can hit it? They're not going. He's not going to play it loud. He doesn't want to wake the kiddies up.
Come on. Do the side.
What?
Use the side.
What side?
It's your first day with a tablet, bro.
Up top?
All right, let's at least turn it down in everybody's ears.
There you go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the December 2nd From the Hill, live from the new Camelot Studios.
What's up, everybody?
You didn't like my intro?
I have to say it too.
I know.
Swag's here with the prof. You guys haven't heard from us in 2 weeks.
Is that not working? It's on your phone, you dummy.
I want to keep playing the music.
How did this turn on?
You just have to tap the top of it.
Oh, I just did that. All right.
Yeah, you just have to tap the
God,
top.
the hard stuff. Hate it. Welcome, everybody, to From the Hill. This is a really important show because there was a lot of things that happened, especially today around noon. Actually, a little bit after noon. They make you watch for like an hour.
Yeah. Prof and I are fired up. We haven't been out for 2 weeks since we did the Screwballs live show. Once again, thanks everybody for coming out to support. It was a successful run there. I know it's tough sometimes. Early Sunday morning, especially with the Eagles game getting flexed to 4 o'clock. So appreciate everybody that came out, but we are fired up. So today is going to be a little different than what we usually do. If you have tuned into the podcast before, typically what we do is we like to start with random topics, right? Or whatever's on our mind, or TV shows, or pop culture, whatever we're doing, right? But today, we're going to flip it. Today, we're going to start with the sports content because once we get to the end of the show, we're going to jump back into the Making a Murderer 2 content. But we already spoiled this before. Major spoiler alerts coming. We're going to talk about the full season. If you haven't seen it by now, like, what's up? It's been out for, what, 8 weeks, Prof? 6 weeks?
Yeah, it came out in October.
Right. So if you haven't gotten
plenty
through
of time. It's
exactly.
December now.
If you haven't gotten through it, that's fine, and you don't want us to spoil it, you'll have to hop off. But everybody that has, we're going to finish up the show with some live Making a Murderer 2 talk and updates. So excited about that. Before we get into the sports content, you'll notice right above the Prof's head, got a new sponsorship. So the UMPR Flag Football League is now partnering with the From the Hill podcast. This is a great flag football league. It's played in King of Prussia. I myself played in it for many years.
What position did you play?
Cornerback and receiver.
Is this a 7-on-7?
Yeah, it's 7-on-7. It's co-ed. The rules are on the website, www.flagfootballamerica.com/UMPR. Check them out. I spoke with Stacy, who runs the league. He's going to give me a write-up for the spring season when they're getting ready to release and get signups. They really want to get some more local teams in there. As I said, it's a great league. It's played over at Heiser Park in King of Prussia. Nice field. So, yeah, if you want to play some flag football, definitely check out the website and share it with your friendies.
Heiser Park, former home of the Valley Forge Bucks. Actually, they still might play there, but I used to play there. Former home of myself as part of the Valley Forge Bucks.
Forge Bucks, King of Prussia Indians.
Let me ask you a question. Did you do any Turkey Bowl things? Because we haven't had a show since then.
No, I didn't. Did you? Did you do any Turkey Bowl?
I did.
You did a Turkey Bowl.
I'm still hurting a
Please
little bit.
did you play tackle football?
No, we played flag.
Yeah.
So Kyle Lochner, who has tuned into the show every once in a while and has been part of the Flag Football League. I think he might have played in Upper Murray, and he played with like Chuck Dinolfi and them.
Sure.
They had a really good team, I think.
Yeah, they
in
did.
That league.
They won the state championship, actually. Marcus Johnson, a buddy of mine. He just got married, too, by the way. Congrats,
Marcus. I know Marcus.
So I think he's actually on his honeymoon right now because usually he likes to hop on. But, yeah, Marcus got married. But Marcus was posting about that team that they were the only, I believe, team in Upper Murray history to win a state championship. So
yeah, so they were like really good. I think Kyle played with them before, but he was kind of going through the rules with us and he kind of explaining it. But that morning when we played, it was it was like 15 degrees and the field was ice and everybody wore their cleats. So it was basically like ice skating playing and everybody got hurt. I think I messed up my quad pretty good.
Yeah, dude, it's something that if you're like, especially playing flag football and such, if you're going to go out and play, you really need to stretch and get yourself loose because it's the first
time I've played in a couple of years,
yeah,
but it's so much fun.
It is fun. It is a lot of fun, and that was a great league. They played their games on Sundays, so I used to do that a lot. So yeah, check that out. And I just saw. Sorry guys, I'm a little behind in the comments. I just saw Wayne. Wayne asked how we like the shirts, so Wayne made our jerseys for the fall league, which we won, the fall softball league. So we appreciate that. They came out good. I really like them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody rocked them. We had the From the Hill on the back. Powell Masonry on the front.
Masonry on the front, From the Hill on the back. By the way, speaking of shirts, I'm rocking the shirt. I'm rocking the hat. If you guys want any swag, hit us up. We'll get the shirts out. I had a couple go this week. A couple people sending me pictures of people wearing the hats that I didn't know, so I was pretty excited about that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, mine's in the wash.
Yeah, that's the only thing with the white in the front. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the sports content and where we wanted to start. Obviously, NFL is going on right now. We're going to touch on that. The 1:00 games are over, but yesterday was a huge day in college football because we had the conference championship games, and they have released the Final Four, right, that are going to be in the playoff. But before we talk about that, I really wanted to talk about the Georgia-Alabama game. This game it had everything that you could ask for, right? Nick, you had a good term for it downstairs. What did you call it?
It was the Hollywood story. It was basically Jalen Hurts going through the season that he had, the adversity that he faced, losing his job essentially from last year, where he, that process kind of started the national championship game last year. And this year to get himself into that Final Four, he had to step in for Tua, who has had such an amazing season, jumps in, they don't miss a beat, and actually he leads them to the comeback to the win.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I actually mentioned to Nick that I thought Tua was he's a little that's the word I want. He's not injury prone.
You want to use the word soft a little bit, I think
I think he's a little frail. I worry about that. People are, worried about Tua at the next level and talking about his prospects, which we don't want to get into too much. But I mentioned you, like, he's been hurt all year, like nagging ankle, nagging this. Every time he gets hit, he gets up slow, and he's not a big guy. So that's a little bit concerning to me. But to your point, here comes Jalen Hurts.
My point about Tua, and you say that about Tua, but I think it's exacerbated a little bit by the fact that they have the luxury of bringing in Jalen Hurts whenever they want, right? So not a lot of people have all-American caliber backups sitting there waiting to go.
No,
right?
No, I mean, who else does?
And I don't know if Jalen Hurts was an All-American, but you know what I mean. He led them to a national championship last year.
Yeah.
So he's definitely capable enough to do it. So any bump or bruise that Tua has, they have the luxury of saying, hey, Jalen, why don't you jump in there and take over for Tua because, his ankle's a little hurt or his elbow doesn't feel very well.
Right.
Like, not a lot of teams have the luxury to do that. So there's a lot of guys playing through probably a lot more than Tua went through this year.
Sure. Well, the interesting thing to me about that game, right, because Bama came out flat, Georgia came out, they were all over them, and Tua was struggling, right? He had 2 bad picks. His completion, he was like 7 for 19 or something. And just like last year in the national championship, the flip back to Jalen, because he's a different style of player, ended up really working out for Alabama, right? Because then all of a sudden they're moving the ball down the field at will, and they're punching it in. But what really, I was watching this game with friends, and they had Georgia outright, so they were really cheering hard for Georgia. And the interesting thing was we were talking about how poorly that game was coached, right? Like that fake punt that Georgia goes for on 4th and 11 at the 50, first off, the play was botched anyway. The fake punt was horrible. Like the guy catches it and runs into the line. Like it was a poorly designed play, poor decision there to go for a fake punt, and they kind of gave the game away, in my opinion.
I feel like Kirby Smart tries to come up with a big play in a big situation, right? And it doesn't work out that way all the time. Like he was trying to write his own Hollywood story, his own version of that,
right.
where and the fact of the matter is, they know on that Georgia sideline they need this game to get in.
Oh, sure, 100%.
So it's kind of no holds barred. They're not holding anything back, right? It's like the Water Boy when with Dan Fouts. Can't hold anything
can't
back.
Hold anything back now.
Last game of the season, can't hold anything back.
We know.
So I think that was the intention of coming up with these big plays in an unexpected spot and it really just didn't pan out for them because Alabama is not just a regular team.
No,
they're
and
not somebody you're going to pull the wool over their
that's
eyes.
right. And what we were saying last night is Alabama is a team that you can't afford to make those type of mistakes against, right? Like you can't be missing a field goal that was a chip shot, and then you can't be fake punting on 4th and 12 and giving them the ball with a tie game with at the 50-yard line. Like you can't do that and expect to beat Alabama. They're too good. So that was I don't know.
You literally need to play the perfect game.
You do, and Georgia played the perfect half. Right, and they just couldn't end up finishing it out. So the interesting thing now that we talk about that game, the others were sort of a foregone conclusion, right? I mean, Clemson spanked Pitt in the ACC championship, and Oklahoma,
which is probably the least watched game out of all the four.
Well, big stud Webb's down there in North Carolina because he's a Pitt guy. So
well, and that's acceptable.
They went down for the
game.
game.
You knew they were going to get rocked, right?
Yeah. I mean, the spread was like 27.
The games that were truly of importance and that everybody was tuned into was the 12 o'clock start for Oklahoma, Texas, the 4 o'clock start for who started it for it was
Bama and Georgia.
Bama, Georgia, and the 8 o'clock for Ohio State.
And
Northwestern.
Which actually, that game was a game for a half, too. Northwestern hung in there.
Yeah, it was. And then Ohio State pulls away. But I think everybody kind of knew how this was going to play out, right?
So let's talk about that. So give me your reaction to the top four, Nick. Obviously, Bama, Clemson, Notre Dame, we knew they'd get in if they all won. They're undefeated. But the fourth slot goes to Oklahoma.
The fourth slot went to Oklahoma, and the way that this formula has gone for this committee, it went the right way. I think it went the right way based on the formulas that they have come up with and what everything, I don't think the best 4 teams got in, but I think the teams that should have got in, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And actually, this is where I wanted to come at you on and come from a different angle because I agree with what you're saying. I think that formulaically, these are the correct teams to put in, right? But it's not the 4 best teams, in my opinion. I think Georgia is a better team than Oklahoma, and I think that they are deserving of the 4th slot. What Rosillo tweeted out, right, about everybody commenting on it, that, well, look, the losses matter, and I agree. And I also think, look, I talk about the sanctity of the college football regular season as one of the reasons why I don't want to go to 16 teams, because every game is so important. And Georgia lost 2 games. However, the thing about the playoff committee is they don't ever say that we have a set criterion, right? It floats. And what they said their ultimate goal is to put the 4 best teams in. And I don't believe they did that. I believe they put the top 3 and then the 5th.
No, I think in a way, I think it was kind of the easy way out doing what they did, putting Oklahoma in. Now, again, like I said, I don't think that they made the wrong decision. Because historically, the way this has gone is you can't jump in over 2 teams with 1 loss that are supposed to be the same type caliber teams.
Right, that won their conference championship.
They won conference championships. It just sucks that Georgia has to be completely 100% perfect throughout the season.
Because then they have to play Bama.
Because they're always going to get to Bama at the end of the year, right? And as long as this dynasty continues, they're going to have to go undefeated until that championship game every single year. And it's really tough because they're playing LSU. And we talked about the schedules at the beginning of the year, and I think LSU had the toughest schedule out of all of them.
Dude, the SEC was a murderer's row. Up until last week, they had 4 teams in the top 10 and 8 in the top 25. Like that, they're back as the premier conference in college football, and it's not even close.
Well, 100%. I think it's been that way for quite some time. But you also have to look at it from an entertainment perspective. So I'm not mad that Oklahoma got in. I actually like the fact that Oklahoma got in because such a dynamic player, Kyler Murray, gets into, the Final Four. And I think that was also looked at. Now, you look at it from Ohio State perspective and the performance that Haskins put up, and that was a big deal as well. But I just don't think he has the kind of clout that Murray has had throughout the entire year, because this is kind of leading up to the highs. Right. The 2 Heisman winners can, at this point,
can play each other.
They're going to play each other, and that thing's going to work itself out.
Yeah, I agree. So Oklahoma has a star power, right? And it's bringing in another section, given the Big 12, another part of the country. The interesting thing to me that we just touched on that you started to was Ohio State, right? And then it would go back is does Ohio State deserve that slot over Oklahoma, given the fact that Oklahoma's defense is so bad, right? But to me, you know how I feel about Ohio State this year. I think their resume to me, first off, straight on eye test, Ohio State is the worst of those three teams, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State. It's not even close, in my opinion, because I watched these games against Purdue and against Nebraska.
They seem very disjointed.
Yeah, against Nebraska.
They don't seem like they can completely put together an entire game. Even in the Michigan game, they didn't put together that entire game from the first half.
Exactly. So I don't think that Ohio State would get in. And I haven't heard a ton of the Ohio State backlash yet. But again, these ratings just came out, 4 hours ago? So I think we're going to hear a lot of talk on it tomorrow. But I do think that they got it right systematically. But I would have liked to have seen Georgia in there. The only problem is, right, playing that card, how do you do your rankings then? Because you can't have Bama and Georgia play each other again the next week, right? Because that's how it would be. Because Bama's going to stay at 1 and Georgia would be at 4. So they would just play each other again next week. Well, I think that came into consideration a lot too, because you're not going to drop Notre Dame below Georgia.
I think Clemson slides up 1. I think Bama drops to probably 3. I think Georgia slides up to 2.
If
this win? Yeah.
Oh, no. If they won, yeah, we talked about that. If they won, it would have been Bama at 4, Clemson 1. Mm-hmm. It would have been Clemson 1, Notre Dame 2, Georgia 3, Bama 4.
I should have said 4, because you still have Notre Dame.
Right, but if you put Georgia in now, right, the only slot open is 4, and they would have to play Bama again next week. So I think that also came into play in the decision because, again, you're talking about entertainment and you're talking about dollars, right? And they don't want to see that game again. They want to see now Oklahoma on the big stage against Bama.
Which I'm not going to go off on the rant about, but it needs to be opened up a little bit. What was pretty telling about the way that the committee saw these teams was the 5 and 6 ranking. So you saw it come out where Georgia was actually in that 5 spot, and they were still ahead of Ohio State. Yep. So the committee did see that disjointedness, or that Ohio State struggled throughout the year.
Yes,
and it wasn't just the one game against Purdue; it was multiple games throughout the season.
I mean, they barely beat Maryland. They barely beat a 2-8 Nebraska team. The thing is, the Big Ten really didn't do themselves any favors this year because they put Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game with 4 losses, right? And Wisconsin had a down year. The entire other half of the Big Ten was terrible. And then Penn State had 3 losses. I think Michigan ends up with 2 or 3 losses. So they don't, even at the top, didn't stay as strong comparatively to. You can say that about Clemson because they played Pitt in the championship, but they went undefeated. So if you go undefeated in a major conference, you're good, right? Ohio State can't lose to Purdue. Like, that's basically what happens. So I think it is what it is. I think, to your point, I think we kind of agree that these are the 4 teams that deserve to be there. And it's the correct matchups, I think, too, right? Like Clemson, Notre Dame, Bama against Oklahoma. I think it's the right matchups.
Absolutely. I think it sets up for a nice final. And now, again, I mean, we looked at this last year. At the beginning of the season, we looked at it even. Last year, we thought at the beginning of the season, okay, it's going to be Clemson, Bama again, right?
Yeah.
And this, at the beginning of the season, we thought Clemson, Bama again, right?
Yeah.
But, we also factored in Georgia as well. And we said Georgia's definitely going to be there, right? I think there was 3 teams that we said at the beginning of the season that were definitely going to be there, and then that 4th spot was still going to be open. We didn't factor in Notre Dame to this whole thing.
No, we didn't. They're always the wild card, right? Because we talk about Notre Dame, and they can always sneak in on you if they go undefeated.
So there's 2 teams that we really didn't account for going into the season, and that was obviously Notre Dame and now Oklahoma. We thought Georgia was going to be in for sure.
Ohio State.
Yeah, but more so going into the season, I think we discussed it. It was definitely Bama, definitely Clemson, definitely Georgia.
Right, and the question, we talked about it, if Georgia get to Bama undefeated, right? And they weren't able to do it.
No, and it's a rigorous schedule for these SEC teams. It's really just a gauntlet, and you really have to. You can't take anything for granted.
No. So did you want to touch on the Tua incident, the interview, because you seemed to be very interested in that?
I was. So I don't know if anybody saw the pregame show on College Game Day, but they did an interview with Tua, and they had his father. And basically what happened is, Tua obviously he grew up, and his father was kind of a disciplinarian and trained with him a lot. They were running on the beach like every day. He was throwing footballs every day. And, it came out that if Tua had a bad game, and this is probably in his teenage years or, in high school, whatever, if Tua had a bad game, he got hit with a belt.
That's crazy.
And they just straight out said it because, listen, I mean, obviously, it's different times now.
Isn't
right?
that? I mean, dude, let's not go crazy on different times. Tua is what, 19 years old?
That's true. That's true.
I mean, this was.
I guess I'm looking at it from my perspective.
Dude,
when I grew up,
right.
I got hit with a belt.
So did I.
Yeah,
but we're 33,
and I can say unequivocally that I deserve to get hit with a belt
every time.
Yeah,
every time I got whipped, I deserved it. But we're 33, and Tua's 19, so he was getting whipped like 7 years ago.
But listen, I will say this:
not 27.
I never got hit with a belt because I had a bad game of any sport.
No,
I usually said something really terrible that would get me chased around the house.
Yeah, I did something terrible. I never got beat for striking out 4 times in a game.
Yeah, so like the father mentions it and Tua mentions it.
They kind of treat it like it's normal,
in
right?
separate interviews. They treat it like it's normal. And I sat on my couch and I'm like, I started going on Twitter. I'm like, this is going to come up. And sure enough, I woke up to an email from Yahoo Sports this morning because I get these stupid updates from them.
Right.
And it's like, admission to like child abuse for. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, I mean,
it just seemed like so odd and out of the blue to me that just came out over the airwaves so freely. It's like they didn't even say, do you really want to say that?
I mean, they just put it out there.
Like I forget if it was Rinaldi or something, but it was one of those reporters. Like,
yeah,
do you really want to say that over the airwaves? But they put it out. And geez, I mean, obviously got the kid to.
I mean, he doesn't think it's weird.
I'm not going to support that.
No, I mean, it's definitely strange. But
I'm sure. Look at all the people lined up that are viewing right now. I'm sure every one of them got hit with a belt at some point.
Yeah,
just from again, different generation, different era.
Oh yeah, well that's what I'm saying. I mean, Tua is a child compared to us. That's the thing. Like, this is a whole generation removed from that. I thought that was gone. I don't know. That's weird. It's funny though.
I just found it interesting that when I'm sitting on my couch and it is a different day and age, and when I heard that, my ears kind of perked up, and I'm like, oh wow, that's interesting. How's that going to come across the airwaves? What are people going to do in terms of reaction? And I went right to Twitter. I'm just like looking for somebody to comment on something. Like,
who's got the comments?
Yeah. Question.
You got to touch it gently.
Right.
So speaking of, let's move to the NFL. There's a lot that we wanted to cover in the NFL, but let's start with the big news this week about Kareem Hunt. Now, this is a tough topic for us to speak on specifically, right? But in generalities on this, basically, if you guys haven't heard, a video came out, Kareem Hunt, the Chiefs running back, of him basically assaulting and shoving a 19-year-old woman, and he was promptly cut by the team. I retweeted a statement from the Chiefs organization that basically said the video was released, and Kareem, we were made aware of the situation back in February, and Kareem was not upfront with us about the explanation that he gave us about the scenario. So he's been released from the team,
which is a fine statement. Okay, I get it. Like, he wasn't upfront with you, but this is a situation where if the topic arises within your organization, you have to do your due diligence and you have to do your investigation and you have to look into it on your own. This isn't a situation where you take the player's word for it because of this situation, because this is going to come up again. Like, don't think that this is going to be swept under the rug and be gone, just can be completely finished. Like, this is going to come up in the future. Obviously, they knew where it happened. He probably told them where it happened. We've seen these grainy hotel tapes over and over again. Like, this is something where you need to get out in front of.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's one of those things from an organizational standpoint where the Chiefs just looked at him like, we don't want to see this. We don't want to see this. So we're not going to go looking for anything. Like,
well, I think what they did, you're right. And Smitty said the guy's a piece of shit. And yeah, you're right. And he doesn't deserve to play. And that's why he's cut. The question is another team going to pick him up? Not this year, right? And if they do, the NFL is going to throw a suspension on him no matter what. So,
well, you heard the 6-game suspension, whatever, but that's kind of beside the point at this
yeah.
point.
The thing is, what I think the Chiefs do, right, and it's sort of a systematic way of not dealing with it. They go like this, right? They cover their eyes, and they say, well, we're going to let law enforcement take over. And then obviously now the private investigation is now complete, and all of the video has been released, including body footage from the officers that were on scene and the hotel footage. And it's a bad scene. It's a bad scene. It really, it's crazy. We were talking about this earlier off of the camera, but these videos that come out, like the Ray Rice one. Do you remember the Ray Rice video?
Absolutely.
Shocking, right? Like, I watched this video and I'm like, wow, this is, to your point, how it could be 6 months. I mean, he's been playing football now for 4 months, and this happened back in February or March. So the fact that this just came out, right, and it's shocking. It's aggressive. So I'm just surprised by the whole situation in that it took so long for this to come out and get resolved, I guess.
Going through the issues that you mentioned, the Ray Rice thing, obviously there's been multiple arrests from almost, I'd say probably 25 different players at this point on domestic violence and just assaults on women. Like, going back to what you said, where they just let law enforcement do their thing, that is such a weak stance for the NFL and for the Chiefs to take.
So
because we've seen the PC commercials that are against domestic violence. We've seen the NFL get out in front of it from a marketing standpoint. For the Chiefs and the NFL to take a stance, well, we're going to let law enforcement handle it. Well, no, you guys are way past that point. Like, we had this happen before. We've gone through this before, and you obviously have not learned from those incidents before.
Right. So the question then, I think Sion just said it too. He said, the Chiefs looked into it. They knew what happened, but they only have to react now because the video came out. I think the real question is, and we asked the same thing. You could replay this entire conversation because we did it with Ray Rice. The question we really ask is, do we know if the team had the video or not? Because if they did, then it's inexcusable.
It doesn't matter,
right?
It doesn't matter. You get the video. How can TMZ get a video, but the Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the NFL can't get a video?
Well, I think I just not trying to defend them, but playing the other side, because TMZ is an investigative, news outlet, and the Chiefs are an NFL team, right?
Yeah.
So they're in the business of playing football.
You don't think that you don't think that they have departments that are dedicated to doing this?
Well, I think
you don't think that they have the resources to go out and find a grainy hotel video?
They do, sure.
And TMZ does?
Well, of course TMZ does.
You don't think that a billion-dollar football team or a multi-billion-dollar organization in the NFL can do some investigative work and go find that video?
I'm not saying – that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when they button their ties up here after they release him, that's what they're going to say, right? They're going to say, well, we're a football team and we play football.
But that's so insulting to the fan.
Sure.
That's so insulting to the fan. It's so insulting to when they try to sell us this bill of goods, because we're looking at on the TV every single week about these commercials about domestic violence, and you've seen them. And it's all the star players are on there, and it's a big deal. I mean, they want it to seem like, oh yes, we really care about this until we have the opportunity to sweep something under the rug and we can put something aside.
I mean, think about it.
And that's not the way to do business, man.
He played 13 games this year, 12 games this year for collected game checks, and that happened in February.
11.
Yeah,
probably 11.
That's a lot. So ugly incident. I don't think we have much more else to say about it. Just ugly incident. Looks bad for the league.
The kid's a young kid. He's a young kid, and that's it. Listen, that's no excuse, but it does bring up. So right when Ray Rice did this, he was kind of further along in his career, right? This kid's in his second year in the league.
Yeah,
and it does. The issue comes up: is anybody going to pick this kid up at some point?
Right.
Now, what his biggest mistake was, he went on television today, and I don't know if you saw the interview or not.
I did not.
It was a cringe-worthy interview that he did. He wanted to kind of get out in front of the story and say, I'm really sorry, but he wasn't really ready to answer the questions that were going to come up. So Lisa Salter from ESPN did the interview.
Okay.
And there were some very, very awkward moments because Lisa Salter, doing her job, asked the questions.
She's tough.
What actually happened? What was the reason that you did what you did?
Right.
And he kind of bypassed all of it. Didn't answer a single question.
Wow.
Just, I'm really sorry. I really regret what I did. Yeah, obviously you regret what you did because you got caught.
Yeah, because the video came
there's
out.
video and you got caught. If this video didn't come out, you'd be playing right now as we speak.
Absolutely, 110%.
So he was not prepared. He just wanted to get out in front of it and just say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Look how nice a guy I am.
Right.
Everybody that knows me knows I would never do something." Well, no.
I mean,
that's not true.
Right.
Obviously, you did.
I mean, listen. At the end of the day, the thing is, someone said this last night, and I said, well, look at the Chiefs statement, right? Obviously, he sat down with Andy and the organization when this happened, and he lied to them. But if you're the kid, what do? I mean, first off, you just don't do it, right? You don't get into that situation. You don't push the girl. You don't hit the girl. You don't get in that situation. But if you're Kareem Hunt, what are you going to do? You're going to tell the Chiefs, oh, yeah, well, I did all that. They would have cut him right there anyway. right? So
I don't know. I think listen, you go to the Chiefs and you say, hey, something happened in February. It was pretty bad. And you guys, we need to get out in front of this somehow. I apologize for what I did. I want to go to get help. I want to go to these, you know how they have these programs that are set up for the players.
Sure.
The resources are there for them to do that, you know. And if he gets out in front of it, admits to them, I did something wrong. It wouldn't go away, but it would be,
maybe he could still be in the league.
He would be able to work himself back into the league. I'm not saying welcome him with open arms and, you know, bring him right back in, but it's, if you get out in front of it and say, listen, I messed up. Like, I really messed up. This is bad. I need help with this. That's how you get yourself back in the league. If you're really interested in keeping your career going and turning a terrible negative into a positive.
Right, because
at some point.
The flip side is now it just looks like you were just hiding behind it and waiting as long as you could until everything came out, and now you're screwed.
Right. Now it's just like, oh, we had this under the rug for 5 months.
Right.
And now I really want you guys to like me. So now I'm sorry.
Right. I'm sorry now.
Which is, it's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, let's get away from that. That was an ugly scene, but we did have to talk about it. So let's talk about the games played. Let's start Thursday. What a surprise, right? The Cowboys, to all of our dismays, minus like Jared and a couple of Cowboys.
A lot of people.
A lot of Cowboys fans.
A lot of people
actually
lost some money on Thursday.
Yes, they did. Well, so I actually want to talk about
Present
that.
company included.
Yeah. So the Saints are held to 10 points in Big D. The Cowboys win 13-10. It was an interesting game to watch.
Was it? Was it?
It felt dirty. It sucked that they ended up beating the Saints because we needed the Cowboys to lose here in Philly, right? And we'll talk about that. But craziest thing was I was at Thursday night at Cornhole, right? And I'm talking to a bookmaker, and I asked him straight away.
Leave names out.
I won't name names. Everybody knows who I'm talking about.
No. I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't.
So I said, how many people are on the Cowboys tonight? And he said 1 out of like 25.
Yeah.
And I said, dude, the call's in. Like, whenever the public is on a team at an 85 to 90% clip, it always goes the other way. And not only did the Cowboys cover, they won outright.
Sure.
So
ugly game.
Yep.
Disgusting game. I went in. I had hockey that night. Okay, so you were at Cornwall. I had hockey at like 10:30 at night. So I go in to get dressed for hockey, and it's halftime, and it's 13-10. I'm expecting to come out and see 52-10,
right,
or 52-13. The Saints are going to come out, and obviously
they just never did it.
They never did it, but they have this offense that is set up to be the highest scoring offense ever. But they didn't get through it, and I don't know how you feel about the conspiracy thing. Are you a conspiracy guy?
Of course, I just brought it up. I think the fix was in. The switch got flipped in Vegas, and they said, "Yo, we got 90% on the other side."
Did you see some of these calls?
We need Cowboys, dude. Did you see? Wait a minute. They were showing the game last night right next to where I was watching the Alabama-Georgia game, and right as there's a commercial, the Kamara hit comes up. Are you kidding me with that? That dude should have got thrown out of the game and suspended for a week.
Absolutely.
I can't believe that there was no flag on that. Some of these pillow fight hits that get flags, and that dude straight turned his head, crown of his head into the side of Kamara's helmet. No flag.
Launches himself directly into his head. Yeah. No flag. And then the one is listen, so I'm not one to say like the refs blew the game. I'm not one to like put that on the refs, and you need to go out and win the game, right?
Of course.
But the Cole Beasley thing where he's 5 yards from the first down marker, his knee clearly hits, and they let him just jump forward for another couple yards and get that first down. That changes the game.
Yep. Yeah, it was
the Saints played like crap.
The Saints did not play well. But it's one of those games where, and I've talked about this with scheduling, right? Because the Saints had won 10 in a row. They haven't lost since like week 2. This is on the road. They didn't necessarily need this game. Dallas needed the game more, right? So everything kind of lines up, and the Cowboys get a huge win. So now the Eagles play the Redskins tomorrow night, and that's really going to determine what team can hold up for second place in the East right now, either the Skins or the Eagles. So that's a huge game tomorrow night. Eagles right now are prohibitive favorites. Obviously, Alex Smith is out for the year for Washington. So old Colt McCoy is back there slinging it. You know where Colt McCoy went to college, right?
Texas.
So Colt's back there slinging it for the Skins. They're in a bit of a slide since Alex Smith went down. So that'll be a big game tomorrow night.
He holds a lot of records there.
Colt, he had a great college career. Absolutely.
Really good college career.
Yes,
That kid
did.
Ellinger, he's a pretty good player too.
Oh yeah.
Likes to run the rock a little bit.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Yeah.
So early games today that we were just watching that got done at the 1 o'clock. Anything stand out to you? I saw.
Yeah, something does stand out to me. Big time.
Go ahead.
Big time. And I'm really kind of I've gone back and forth with people on Twitter. I've gone back and forth with people on Facebook about this, and it's Andrew Luck. So people are so gassed up on Andrew Luck.
Easy.
And his comeback, I get it. It's great. He's played really, really well. Threw 3 touchdowns for 8 straight games. Congratulations. I bow down to you. You're wonderful. Look at the schedule. If you take a look at the schedule that he's played over the last 8 weeks and the schedule that he has coming up, that is such a bad division. You're basically given 6 wins, minus the Texans, okay?
Listen.
The Texans are a good team, but his schedule it's ridiculously bad.
Listen. Andrew Luck doesn't make the schedule.
I don't care.
Right? And he doesn't make his division. Listen,
I don't care. But don't tell me he's the MVP. And then when he puts up a turd like he put up today with 0 points, they scored 0 points today against Jacksonville.
Okay, let me ask you that: who is your league MVP
right now? Well, since Drew Brees later.
Yeah.
Honestly, right now
it's Patrick Mahomes.
I don't know about that. I think you can make a case for a gentleman by the name of Aaron Donald. I'm serious. I know it doesn't happen. I know it's not.
The South out.
Listen, I know it doesn't happen. I know it's not gonna happen. But the guy on defense he's unstoppable.
He is very good on defense. But don't you think Khalil Mack is having a better year defensively than Donald is? And the Bears are playing really well.
It's up for debate. Now, listen, I say that partially tongue in cheek. Okay, like I get it.
It's going to be a quarterback.
No, it's absolutely going to be a quarterback. It's absolutely 100% going to be a quarterback. But Breeze just kind of blew it.
Give me your top 3 if you were voting right now in order.
Man,
top 3 on your ballot right now. You have an MVP. Obviously, we have MVP votes. We're from the Hill, so you give me give me your top 3.
Oh man, you're going to put me in a spot right now.
Come on.
All right, hold on a second. I think Mahomes has to be at the top. Is that who's at the top for you?
I mean, if I'm my voting right now would be, I would put Jared Goff at 3. I would put Breeze at 2, and I'd go Patty number 1. I mean, dude, the guy's gonna he's on pace to break the touchdown record.
I'm gonna give Breeze some leeway. And, he can definitely come back from this. I still think that they're a top 2 team. I really think they're a top 2 team in the NFL, let alone just the NFC. I think he's going to bounce back. Obviously, he's Drew Brees. It's not like this is his first rodeo.
Sure.
So right now, I will put Mahomes up at the front because he has been explosive. The turnovers hurt him a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't protect the ball as much, but he also makes more explosive plays than the other
He's
guys.
A slinger.
And, I think Goff has been unbelievable this year. I think he has a little bit more around him that makes him look maybe a little bit better than he is. And maybe that's unfair. Maybe it's not. But I would go Mahomes, Breeze, then Goff.
Yeah.
If we're taking Donald out of the running.
That's me too. I mean, I can't see. Thing is, with defensive players now, like
it's ridiculous.
It's never going to happen.
No, it's not.
It can't, right? And that's the thing that sucks. But you're never going to get a defensive player to an MVP again unless they have like 40 sacks.
No, I completely agree with it. But I just kind of trying to make a point.
Yeah, I got you. So what stood out to me, actually, I'm a huge Andrew Luck fan, so I hate your criticism of him. I think you need to bend the knee to the great Andrew Luck.
Listen, it's not even necessarily a criticism of him. It's the schedule. Like,
you don't like the praise that he gets.
I think it's a little bit overrated.
Well,
I think it's a little overblown.
You saw me take to Twitter. Listen, Andrew Luck in 6 seasons is a 3-time Pro Bowler. He led the league in touchdown passes one year. He was Rookie of the Year. Like, he's a pedigreed player, and he's
gone through a lot since then.
Sure, but I mean, he's having a great year. It's a #comeback season.
I know that, right? But go back and really look at his schedule, and it's less than impressive. That's all I'm saying.
So I'll tell you what stood out to me in the early games today was the Packers losing outright to the Cardinals. I was talking to our resident Wisconsinian,
Manitowoc,
from Manitowoc County, and he's like, dude, McCarthy's gone. And he said it's kind of like the Andy Reid situation here in Philly. Like, it's just time. He's been there for too long. Him and Rodgers are at odds. They're 4-6-1 now or something like that, or 4-7-1. Like, they're done. They just lost to the Cardinals, who stink underwater. It's like their season's over, and I think you just fire McCarthy tomorrow, quite frankly.
I almost 100% agree with you, and you can tell that there's not necessarily a tension or like a tension between McCarthy and Rodgers, but there's the body language of Rodgers is telling of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like he's not happy. We know he's kind of a cantankerous guy anyway. He's kind of a weird dude.
He's different.
But like obviously you're going to hitch your wagon to Rodgers, who by the way, it's his 35th birthday today. You're going to hitch your wagon to him before you're going to hitch your wagon to McCarthy. Obviously, they both won a Super Bowl together. McCarthy has been a good coach in this league, so I don't think he's necessarily done. I don't think he's bad, but I think that relationship is over.
Yeah, I agree with you 110%. Everything that you said, and it's just like I drew the parallels to Andy Reid, right? Because it was the same thing here. I think when you're staying in one place for too long,
I think he can go elsewhere and be successful.
Exactly, things can get stagnant, right? And you kind of lose that luster when you've been in one spot too long in the NFL. Very few coaches have been able to stay in one spot for 15 years, and McCarthy's been there forever.
I think they asked a lot of Aaron in terms of the basic play call. I don't see a lot of like their offense isn't very intricate in that way. Where I see it's more like Aaron, just like do your thing and get us to where we need to go.
Right.
And now that he's getting up in years a little bit, not that he's lost much talent, because he still has all the tools to be a great quarterback. But I think it's just been a bland offense. It's been kind of a vanilla offense where it's just, okay, we have these receivers, go out and run around and see what Aaron can do.
Oh, I agree. And the thing is,
I mean, do you really see it the same way?
I do actually.
I don't see any consistency in their offense.
Here's the thing. No, actually, I want to disagree with you, because people like when we disagree, yeah. But I don't. I actually agree 100%. And the thing I would add on that is that, listen, Rodgers is 35 years old, and when you play that style of offense where you're letting the pocket break down, it's almost like Sandlot type of football. What I'd heard was, look, Rodgers is coming off a leg injury, and he may have lost half a step in the way he can move. What made him so effective before was his ability to just turn his shoulders and get to top speed and be able to scramble around and move around. And if he starts to lose some of that, what made him so special with his legs, right, then that means that whole Sandlot style and those deeper routes and those deeper progressions, those 7-step drops, they're not there if you can't protect them. So I agree with you 100%. And
he's obviously been dealing with something.
Yeah. And
that was evident in the game last week against Minnesota.
Yeah, he's hopping around.
There were clearly different throws that are just basic throws. These weren't even Aaron Rodgers throws. These were wide open throws where maybe he's moving out of the pocket a little bit, but he could do those with his eyes closed.
Oh yeah.
And he just simply missed the throws.
Yep.
And so I think he's definitely dealing with something that he's worked through, and it's definitely that knee.
It's that leg. It's that knee.
From the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that takes McCarthy off the hook. So,
no, it doesn't.
Because he's still playing at a semi-high level. He's got all the tools.
I just think
for years that defense has been their Achilles, and now I think it's just like everything is just dried out, and just they need to change things up. They need a
full regime shift is what they need. They need to bring someone else. And speaking of that, we didn't do a show last week, but there's something I want to talk to you about, because of course we want to talk about the Browns. By the way, the Browns got annihilated today in the 1:00 games, which makes me happy, obviously. But the last week the Browns played the Bengals, and there was a weird occurrence with Hugh Jackson, because he got fired as the Browns head coach, and then Marvin Lewis gave him a job on the Bengals staff.
Yes.
So then
they're best buds.
The Browns play the Bengals. The Browns end up spanking the Bengals, and now Hugh Jackson, goes to like shake Baker's hand or whatever, and Baker Mayfield really wasn't having any of it, right? Mm-hmm. So first, I know you're a Baker guy. Give me your take on. Let's start with the Baker reaction to, their former coach, and what you think about him going from the Browns to the Bengals in season.
Okay, so I've heard a lot of different things about this. I've compartmentalized and come out with my opinion on it, and I think Baker is 100% in the right. I think he's completely within his boundaries of doing what he did, where he kind of snubbed Hugh Jackson, and there's a reason for it. the first is, okay, he goes interdivision, right? He
Agreed.
knows
Yes.
the next game he's coming up against the Browns, and he's going to coach against the team that he was just in their locker room running their locker room.
He just laid out to him all of Baker's weaknesses,
right.
all the plays that they run, probably their signals, right? All kinds of nonsense.
But that's only one part of it. So I was able to catch a lot of these shows, these debate shows, and these shows throughout the week where they dive into like next level things where some of it's boring, but some of it's legitimate.
Right.
And Hugh Jackson, it didn't matter if it was on Get Up or on Colin Cowherd or on FS1, ESPN, whatever network he could get on throughout that week that he was unemployed, he got on. And he put a lot. He took all of the blame, took it off himself, and put it on other people. And I think that's where Baker got kind of upset. And I understand that. So that's why I think that he was in the right by kind of blowing him off, saying, I'm not going in for the bro hug here. Like, no, dude, like, okay, thanks for playing us. We beat you. Take your ass back into the locker room.
I think he's an ass face.
Right. So that's where it came from, I think. When Hugh did his media tour, that's where it broke down and Baker said, all right, we're going to at some point have a handshake in the middle of the field. I'm not going in for the bro hug to make everything look like it's hunky-dory.
Yeah, so I agree with your take on it. I think Baker.
No, you don't.
No,
you don't.
I think Baker was a little immature there, a little bit.
No.
He could handle it a little more professionally. However, at the basis of what you're saying, I agree 100%. I think, first off, him going there intra-division is a little much mid-season, right? And I heard Golick and Wingo say, well, what if you lost your job and then someone else, competitor offered you a job? Well, no.
Yeah, don't you have a right to work? Okay, I get it. You definitely have a right to work.
But that's why teams have non-competes. And by the way, if the Browns fired him, I'm assuming they're paying the rest of his contract, right?
No,
they have to pay.
I don't think so. The Browns are.
The Browns are, right.
The
Browns are
paying.
paying.
He's getting a minimal amount
to be on the Bengals.
Bengals.
That's what I'm saying. So, the Browns are paying his contract. I guess it's their fault for not having a non-compete with him for the rest of the year. But it's just weird to have a guy who was across the sidelines 2 weeks ago, and then have him across on the other side. It's just strange. I don't like it.
I really don't think that was the issue at all. I really don't think if he got fired and it was simple as that, he got fired and he went to go coach for another team. Like if it was that simple, sure. I don't think Baker's within his rights to give him the snub and talk about him the way he did after the game. But the fact that he went on the media tour and said the things that he did, well, now that opens it up. It's like, no, dude, like you were my boy a week ago, and now you're going out and saying all the blame is on other people except for myself.
Right. I think what it really proved to me, if I looked at it, is that Baker really never liked him as a head coach. Right. I don't think they ever really saw eye to eye.
You saw him on Hard Knocks, would you?
Yeah. No,
he doesn't strike me as somebody that leads men.
I don't honestly don't think he's a very
good
coach.
No,
I don't think you do either.
No, I don't see that at all. And I mean, his best friend's Marvin Lewis. Do you see Marvin Lewis as that guy?
Did he just get a 15-year extension?
Probably, but we've seen him in Hard Knocks. And I'm not saying that Hard Knocks is like the end-all be-all of what a coach is, but we've seen some bad coaches in Hard Knocks, and then usually like the next year they're gone.
Yeah.
Like Mike Smith, Jeff Fisher, who else? Billick wasn't a bad coach, but he was gone like shortly thereafter. Who else?
Who else has done Hard Knocks?
We've done the Cowboys had one.
Cowboys had it. Garrett's still there.
Was he on Hard Knocks?
It was Garrett. Yeah.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
No way.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Garrett was on Hard Knocks.
I mean, Marvin Lewis is still there. You get a good feel for some of these coaches when you get a look inside the locker room and look at what the players think and how in tune they are with the quote-unquote message. I mean, I feel like you can pretty much figure that out.
Yeah, I agree.
And early on,
Sion says Hugh Jackson was a clown head coach. I agree. I mean, look, I don't know how he held on to his job that long.
Well, they had multiple clowns in there. I mean, Hugh Jackson, and then to top it off, Todd Haley. No, Todd Haley.
No, I know.
I mean, Todd Haley was. He seemed to me like a clown of all clowns.
What is his deal? He's like such a gifted offensive mind, but he just can't get along with anybody. Like, I don't get it. What's his story?
What makes him a gifted offensive mind, other than the fact that Ben Roethlisberger made him look good for a lot of years?
I guess he came originally from the Cardinals, right? When they had Warner,
he coached the Chiefs, and they were awful.
Yeah, that's true.
They were awful. So he went from the Chiefs, I think, to I think he went to the Steelers after that,
went
and
to
then
the
I guess he
Cardinals.
had some success there, which just begets other jobs, which is just like, I don't know, man. There's feelings that I get from Jackson and Haley. It's like, what are these guys even doing
Well,
here?
and there's part of this like NFL recyclability of coaches, right? They just cycle the same guys like over and over and over again to different teams, and you're like, what's going on here? Like, why does this? Oh yeah, of course. Now he's the offensive line coach on this team, or now he's the defensive coordinator on this team. Like, it's these guys just keep getting passed
Well,
around.
I think there's guys that operate well in a secondary position where they're not the face of the organization in terms of, like, if you're the offensive coordinator, McDaniels, okay? Josh McDaniels was a coach at Denver, and it was kind of a disaster. I mean, most of it was his drafting, but for the most part, it was a disaster. Like, that team didn't look good. They got to the playoffs once, maybe.
Yeah.
But then he goes back to OC in New England after taking the head coaching job in Indianapolis, but then going back to New England. And now, okay, he's still regarded as this wonderkin almost, you know, because he's a younger guy. He's an offense. Same thing with Matt Patricia. Like, Matt Patricia goes and coaches the Lions, they actually put up a decent little fight today against the Rams.
Not covering, which is all I care
about. No, I know. But, you know, like – guys get in certain situations and they handle it well when they're not in the spotlight. Then that spotlight hits them, and
and
things can go south.
Being the head coach of a team is a different monster, right? So, before we move off the NFL into Making a Murder, I know you guys really want us to talk about it, so we're getting there. I wanted to talk about your social media post about the uniforms because we had some fun with that. So tell us about your post, and then give us who you got. I know you got some feedback on it too.
Yeah, well, I was watching we were watching the game on Thursday, and Amanda said, "I like the Saints uniforms. Those are sharp. I think they're the sharpest uniforms." Sharp is important.
Sharp is a 1950s term.
Sharp is an important term because there's a distinction between, like, the best uniforms and the sharpest uniforms,
yes.
Right?
I
don't know. Well, anyway, she thinks that the Saints uniforms are the sharpest uniforms, and I said, I see that. Like, I like them. I like them a lot. I think they were wearing their whites that night.
I thought they had the black with the full gold instead of like the trimmed one.
Very possible.
Yeah.
Whatever. She likes them. They're the sharpest. I said, I don't know. My personal favorite is I like the Ravens. I like their color scheme. I like the uniform.
Like the black and purple.
They incorporate the state flag, which I made another post about earlier this week.
Maryland people people from Maryland love their state flag. It is a really cool state flag.
It is a cool state flag. It's used a lot.
It's everywhere.
And obviously, we're up in the eastern part of the country, and people got back to me on social media and said, well, have you ever been to Texas? Yeah, they use their flag a lot. And, Colorado.
Oh, Texas is almost its own country.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah.
But, I've seen a lot of Maryland flags throughout the years. I don't even think I could tell you what the Pennsylvania state flag looks like.
I don't know what the PA state flag looks like. I only know California because it's got the big bear.
Yeah.
It's the big bear. I know the Maryland state flag. God bless. I don't know what a PA state flag looks like. It's got to be like
South Carolina is used a lot. You see the tree and the moon.
I couldn't tell. I don't know if
you've seen it a lot.
Maybe.
It's the little, I don't know if it's a palm tree or not, but it's like a little tree with a little half moon.
I'll have to look it up and see if I recognize it.
You've definitely seen that a lot, but I think Maryland reps their state flag pretty well.
They do.
So it's long and short of it. It's part of their jersey.
You like the Ravens.
For the Ravens, I think sharp wise, I think the Ravens are the sharpest.
Ravens are
we got a lot of feedback on my post, and there was a lot of different stuff. Like, some people like the old school, like the early teams,
like a favorite of mine, the Raiders,
the classics, right? The 49ers, the Packers, the Raiders, the Bears. Okay, and I'm on board with the Raiders.
I love the Raiders.
I like the Raiders. The Raiders brings me back a little bit. So when I was younger, I had a Raiders jersey. I had the Hutch helmet, and I would put the Raiders stuff on, and it was fresh, man. That was
Raiders,
fresh.
It's amazing. That black and silver is just incredible. The color scheme's great. It's simple, but it's strong. Raiders jerseys are awesome.
But I'm not on board. Like, I think the Packers are the number one overrated in terms of.
You said that.
Okay, they're classic. Okay, don't get me wrong. Don't take this the wrong way. They're definitely a classic uniform. Okay,
sure.
I respect the nostalgia and I respect the history of the uniform. But they're mucus colored uniforms. Long and short of it is they're mucus colored uniforms.
I like that green and yellow together. I do
too. Brett Favre is my favorite player. I love the the nostalgia. I love the history, but when I look at the uniform, it's not like, oh, that's a nice looking uniform.
Yeah.
That's a mucus colored uniform.
Yeah. So I think they're right in the middle in terms of their jerseys. I posted the old, this was a Matt Newfer saying in college. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this. Cleveland Browner. That's a good uniform and a bad helmet. It also applies elsewhere, if you can extrapolate what I'm talking about.
Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah. So we use that term a lot. But I think the Browns do have. I like the Browns uniforms. I really like the Raiders, and I'm on board with the Seahawks. It's funny when they first made that change to that like tealish blue and then the neon green trim. I hated it, but now I really like them. They're some of my favorites. Love the Seahawks.
I like the Seahawks. It's decent, but I also feel like it's on the newer, like more trendy side.
It is. The numbers have that that new age look to them.
Yeah. Do you think it holds up over time?
I love them now. I'll tell you what jersey I don't like. The Eagles. This green that we have.
The midnight green.
The midnight green. I don't love it.
I love the Eagles whites, and I love when they do the black.
Well, yeah, I don't like that midnight green.
No, I agree with you. I would be all for going back to Kelly.
I think everybody would. I think that's going to be our next poll because we're going to get into our Making a Murder polls. This week's poll is going to be Eagles go back to Kelly Green. I'll bet you just a 95% rate. Everybody wants to go back to Kelly Green. It's so much better. I think the reason they moved away from it was because of the Jets, right? Because it was too close to the Jets. But the midnight green is just not.
The Jets have moved forward with their different.
Their green is different now too. Yeah,
and they've actually gotten closer to ours.
Yeah, but it's still cooler looking than the Eagles.
There was another one that Amanda mentioned, and she liked the Lions. The
that
Lions
blue.
look. Yeah,
it's because of that blue.
Yeah.
You know what I get? Carolina's got a cool color scheme.
That's a little trendy for me.
Yeah,
that's not going to hold up. That's not going to stand the test.
That neon blue with the black.
Yeah, it's not going to hold up.
The Panthers are pretty good. So the one team that seemed to be like love-hate was the Dolphins. Some people love the Dolphins uniform. Some people hate them.
I feel like they're so 70s. Like
they feel like something out of Miami Vice.
Yeah, when you used to walk into like your grandmom's house and there was like the orange carpet or like the
shag,
the puke green color carpet, or like all the appliances were either orange, brown, or green. Like that's when I look at the Miami Dolphins colors. That's what I think of. I think of that old school like 70s type of look. And I get it. They're also like a historic franchise, but they're not there. They're not there at the top for me.
No. Oh yeah, Kristen chimed in. She likes the Kelly Green. See, we already got votes for Kelly Green, dude. I'm telling you, I'm gonna put this poll up, and everybody's going to say Kelly Green. I'll bet you the only people that don't are Cowboys fans or people that don't like the Eagles.
I mean, because that would have been if that held strong till today. Like we're going on what? Like it's got to be
the midnight green's like
it's got to be close to 20 years.
Yeah, like
right?
20 years. Yeah.
I mean, so if we held strong with the Kelly Green, that would be considered one of the classic uniforms.
100%.
We would be up there with the Bears. We'd be up there with the 49ers.
And to your point, like the Jets have sort of darkened theirs a little bit. They've sort of evolved. That color could have evolved with us too, like a slight, maybe a shade tweak or a little bit, kind of like.
I don't think it's necessary.
Well, what about the ones that they wore? Remember they did it like 10 years ago because I had one with Deshaun Jackson that I actually gave to Cahill. They were in agreement. They were a little different. They had like the high gloss finish on them. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
I'll have to pull one up. I'll put it up on the.
But the point is, are there any teams that use that Kelly Green color anymore?
No, I don't think so.
So I think it's perfect.
I agree with you.
It's time.
I'm in agreement.
Let's do it.
So speaking of polls, here we go. We're gonna talk Making a Murder 2. Now you guys know that we've talked a lot about this previously, but we are gonna talk about details of the show for the next 15 to 20 minutes. So if you haven't finished season 2, you might want to hop off. Major spoiler alert. And you know what? What you should do is click right here, whatever you're watching on your phone or your computer or your tablet, and go click on the Netflix app and finish watching Making a Murder 2 right now, because if you haven't, you need to, right? You need to be finished.
Yeah, if you're not on it now, you're not going to finish. You probably haven't started.
So we said we wanted to put some polls up, so we put polls out on Twitter and Facebook, and the basis of the polls were, after season 2 of Making a Murderer, do you think that Stephen Avery is guilty or not? So Twitter, we had over 80 responses. 73% of the votes tallied said not guilty. And on Facebook, we had a 18-2 not guilty to guilty tally. So that's basically 100 votes, and you're hovering around the 80 to 83% range of not guilty. So clearly, I think a lot of people's complaints of making a murder overall is that's a little slanted towards the defense, right? But Nick and I are going to talk about that now. Clearly, people are on board with the fact that Stephen Avery is not guilty. So
people are buying into this Netflix, man.
That's right.
They're buying
into
in
the angle,
the propaganda.
So the question is, now we're going to fully react to season 2, and there's things that we didn't talk about that we wanted to. Where I really wanted to start was at the end of the season, because I feel like it's the most telling to where this is going in terms of their overall cases. I've said this before. I say it again every time I bring it up. I don't think if I walked into the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department right now with a signed confession, I think they would boot me out the door and say, "No, we got our guys." The state of Wisconsin is never going to let these guys out of prison. Never going to happen. And the telling thing to me was the final episode of season 2 when Steven is on the phone with his sister, and Kathleen has just released her update to his case, which lists Dassey and what's the stepfather's name?
Rick. Is it Rick?
I don't think it's Rick. Rick Grimes.
I don't know.
No, it's what the hell's the guy's name? But it's Dassey.
Look it up.
And
if it's Rick, you owe me.
It's
sandwich.
definitely not Rick. I'll bet you a sandwich on it right now. It's not Rick. But they release it, and the guy's in the background on the phone, right? And
Scott.
That's Scott Taddick. That's it, Rick. Yeah.
I didn't even look at it up.
Yeah,
I didn't even look
Scott
I didn't even look
Taddick.
at it yet, but
Yeah,
it just hit me.
So they named them, right, as primary suspects, and the sister's having the conversation with Steven while Scott's in the background. It's a whole nightmare of a mess. But what's crazy to me is the details that came out about Bobby Dassey, and the big red herring for him, right, is this affidavit that Kathleen Zellner has that was not admitted to evidence, where before he did his testimony for the prosecution that really indemnified Steven, he made a statement to his sister, who then made it to the police, and they have the signed affidavit that said, "Steven couldn't have done this. I watched Teresa pull away from the lot." He made that statement, but then recants it and then testifies to the opposite, that he saw her going to Steven's trailer. And so a part of Kathleen's entire season 2 building her case is, sort of retracing steps, and now, of course, having to try and find other suspects. And I mean, who else is there to point at? It's Bobby Dassey hasn't been to see his brother in prison since he got in prison. Since Brendan got put in, he doesn't go to see him. He's a drug addict now. He won't talk about it. He wouldn't be on the show.
These are all things that you found out from the show.
Yeah.
Right.
So go ahead. I just talked a lot. You go.
Listen, I have been on board with the Bobby Dassey theory since season 1. I called that out. I called it out as we watched. I'm like, that was weird testimony. I think these guys are involved. It's weird. Like you kind of had a weird feeling about it. But I also am one to be skeptical of what I'm told through entertainment. Shows that are brought to me only for entertainment value. What is Netflix there for? So you can go on, watch what you want, be entertained, get your fix. And so they're spoon feeding me the information that they want me to hear.
Of course, it's more. I mean, the name of the show, Making a Murder. So of course, it's a more dynamic, entertaining experience.
I personally need more information. I had a lot of trouble clicking the button to say not guilty because I'm skeptical of what I'm fed.
I agree with you. So here's the thing. The other thing about the end of season 2 that I thought was really telling, the biggest thing here that gets Steven outside of Brendan's confession, right, which we've talked about, and part of season 2 goes through Brendan's confession and the federal government, federal judge ruling that it was insubmissible as evidence. Then the Wisconsin State Attorney General appeals that decision, and then the Wisconsin Supreme Court, they uphold it. Then they go to the Seventh Circuit of Appeals in Chicago. A panel from there, they
re-uphold the federal decision by 2-1. Then they go back for the full panel, and then the panel denies it again at 5-4, or sorry, 4-3. But the statement from the lead judge of the 7, the female, was telling to me when she just talked about how she was disgusted watching the video. And it was interesting to me to hear the differing judges' opinions who sat on each side of the fence on whether or not incorrect tactics were used or if the confession was coherent and admissible and not forced, right? All that. But what was even more telling, if we get away from the confession, was the RAV4, right? And its location and the fact that the guy, the eyewitness, who is a friend of Scott Haddock's and was texting him that night and saw the officer, the guy, the bad sheriff, right, who's got all the stuff from Steven before, saw him at the convenience store and said, yo, that RAV4 is right down the road. And then he texted Scott that he found it. And then all of a sudden, the next day, the RAV4 shows up on the Avery's lot. There's no explaining it. And the thing is, I've always been skeptical since season 1 of the vehicle on the lot. Because from the very first, or I think it's the second episode, when they find the RAV4 there, listen, they own a salvage yard, right? They own a salvage yard. And this thing is lined up along the side of the salvage yard, covered in like a branch and a couple leaves on top of the thing. They own a salvage yard. They would move that thing. They would hide that thing if they're going to commit a murder, not just leave it sit at the back of the yard. It's completely planted to me. Now, the rest of it with the blood and the DNA, right, that's sort of what Kathleen has been going through to try and disprove of the original prosecutor's case. But to me, the key pieces are the Bobby Dassey affidavit that stated that Steven couldn't have done it because he saw her leave, but then he testifies the other way, right, that he saw Teresa go to Steven's trailer. And then this guy texting Scott saying, yo, that RAV4, I found it up the street. And he told that officer, and then the next day it shows up on the Avery's lot. Those things, to me, need to be investigated further and need to be explained because those are huge missing pieces to the entirety of the puzzle. When it comes down to it, people have asked me the same thing Nick just said. He was skeptical of pushing the not guilty on the vote, right, on the poll. I'm not sure if he is not guilty, but I don't believe that he's guilty is what I'm saying. I think that I don't know if he was involved or not, but I don't think that he committed the murder. I don't think that he did it. And so I want to know who did, but the whole process itself is what's super interesting to me too. And like we were talking about with the appeals. So yeah.
In terms of your lot theory, where it wouldn't be placed on a lot, let's not act like we're dealing with, Yale, Harvard grads here.
Okay, I'm with you. Right. They're not the most intelligent folk, right? However, they do run a salvage yard, and that what they do is move cars around, right? I mean, this thing is, right, it's like, a tow truck driver coming, and then you being like, well, dude, you don't know how to tow my car? Like, that's what you do for a living. These guys run a salvage yard. All they do all day is move cars around. So if they're going to move a car and hide it, they could have very easily done that. But it's just sitting there. Every other car in the area is lined up in straight lines, right? Like, and then this car is just randomly sitting there, not in line.
And again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Like, so I kind of want him to be innocent because you've heard all the evidence and you've seen all the things that it could be somebody else, and I want the right person to be held responsible for it, right? But so I don't know how involved is Steven Avery in running that salvage yard. Because from what I understand, and just looking at the family the way it is, I think his father runs the salvage yard. I think his two brothers are responsible for running a lot of that salvage yard because obviously he's been in jail for 18 years beforehand.
I was going to say.
So is he the guy going out using the backhoe to pick up the cars, to crush the cars, to do this? Like, is he the guy that's really doing all this stuff? Or is he, he's sitting in a trailer at 3:00 on a whatever day it was a Tuesday. He's sitting in there in the trailer waiting for this girl to come take pictures. It's not like he's working at the salvage yard. Why wouldn't he just say, hey, come on over to the salvage yard. This car's sitting here. I'll park it right in the front lot. You come over, take some pictures of it. I got stuff to do. Take pictures and go be on your way.
Well, I think the thing, we don't know how involved Steven is in running the salvage yard because, to your point, he spent 18 years in prison before that. So
yeah, well, that's not like
he was only out for a year and a half.
Let's not act like he's out there running the lot and crushing cars
right, but,
and picking things up.
But like,
and,
if you
running a business,
listen, it just, to me, logically, right? Because when you roll up on that thing, when they roll up on it with the pictures there, it's so out of place. Like,
absolutely,
like it's sticking out like a sore thumb.
Sure.
Like, I'm just picturing in my head Steven parking the car there, right, and then finding a big giant branch, and like laying it over. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, we're making light of it was a murder, so murder doesn't make any sense either. But I don't know. Those are, to me, those are the key pieces of the case.
Well, we are sitting here like thinking of these things through like logically. What would I do if I wouldn't put this branch over the car and put it right on my own lot? Well, like, you don't think logically when you're committing murder.
Of course not.
And when you're in the process of trying to erase something that you've done that's so heinous.
Just
right?
as Kenneth Kraft said, well, he's a sociopath. Yeah, he's a psychopath.
Like, but we're sitting here thinking of it just here in the new Camelot Studios. Well, he didn't have that luxury. Like, he could have already murdered somebody. It's like panic time. Like,
right.
What do I do?
Right.
Okay, I'm going to throw this branch over a car.
Right.
Like, we don't know what we would do in that situation.
I totally agree.
I certainly hope not.
I haven't committed murder yet, so I can't tell you what I would do.
Like,
I agree.
He's not of above average intelligence. He's in a panic situation. He's got the kid Brendan probably with him that's coming up with ideas.
I don't think,
Lord knows what that kid's saying.
I don't even think Brendan Dassey was there, but that's a whole.
They did find shackles. That was part of the case. So when people say that she wasn't shackled to a bed or anything like that, well, they actually did find shackles, and he kind of equated it to, well, it was something that me and Jody were doing. You know what I mean? Like, which I'm glad that's not part of the documentary. I'm glad that was held out. But, like, there were some things that were hidden in the documentary that if you just do a little bit of digging on the internet, you come up with different pieces of evidence that they came up with. So I'm not saying one way or the other, okay? Like I said, I just want it to be the right person. I don't know if he is or not. But until we have that evidence, until we have that information, they've gone through this process legally. If it wasn't him, it's terrible. It's terrible that they have him in there for that long. But the right person needs to be found. They've gone through the legal process. He's held. It now takes more evidence to get him out. It's not innocent until proven guilty anymore. That's what I mean by that.
No, I agree with you.
He's gone through the process. He's been deemed guilty.
He's already been
It's going to take a lot more
right.
to get him out. So it's not just like, oh, well, I have a hunch. He's innocent. Like, it's not. That's not.
No, I agree.
That's not the way it works anymore.
Nope.
We're past that point.
Yes, because he was convicted by a jury of his peers, right, as we say. So he has to be proven innocent now. So last thing on that before we close up, let me ask you secondarily then. A big focus of this has become Brendan Dassey as well. Do you think that Brendan Dassey was involved?
I think one kind of begets the other. So I think if Steven was involved, I think Brendan was involved. But that's not the point of Brendan Dassey. That's really not the argument for Brendan Dassey. The argument is the investigation that took place that led to Brendan Dassey's arrest. Was that constitutional? That's the argument. And I think that process was botched entirely.
I am on the side of, I think that his confession is an incoherent babble of nonsense.
Of what you saw.
I watched the whole thing on the internet. You can get the whole thing. And it is, the thing that's striking to me is the officers are asking him a question about the RAV4 after they've gotten him to say other things. And they're trying to coerce out of him exactly what they want to hear. And so they go, what happened next, Brendan? What did Steven do with the car? He put the gun in it? No, that's not it. Like, he's just he's just pulling shit out of his ass. Like, he is just spewing things out the way an 8-year-old who just got caught with his hand in a cookie jar would. And it's such an incoherent babble that they piece together to be his confession. I agree with the minority judge dissenter of the Seventh Circuit of Appeals, who basically said, when I watch the confessions, I'm like, this is a farce. I'm on the other side of that. I know that the 4 judges upheld it, but I'm with the 3 who didn't. I think that confession is contrived. I think it's basically incoherent. I think that poor kid had no idea what he was saying, what was going on, and I don't think it's at all an accurate representation of really anything that happened that day. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and it's hard to say that poor kid, because if one of those things that he knows is true, well, it's not that poor kid anymore. Now it's just a kid trying to cover himself, and he doesn't do a good job of it. But you don't have to look at what he said. Nothing of what he said even matters. It's what was asked of him and what came from law enforcement. That's the point. That's the point of this whole thing, if it was constitutional or not. And that's kind of what at a certain point in this process, they had a major victory, right? The near rider and the other attorney that works with
Dassey's.
Yeah. They had a major victory, and it was based on everything that came from law enforcement side. So I wasn't even as much focused on what his answers were as opposed to what the questions were and the prompting that came from law enforcement.
I agree.
And so when you look at it from that standpoint, Dassey's confession, quote unquote, works against Stephen. Okay, now let's look at if Dassey's confession is pulled and deemed inadmissible and reversed, and he's out of jail, then I feel like that opens the door wide open for Stephen.
Yes, it does.
And I think that's kind of what's keeping Dassey in jail at this point.
It is. It 100% is.
Because they don't want to look back and
Correct.
say, we really screwed up this. If we screwed this up, now we screwed this up.
Yes.
And now everything's
You're
going down.
110% correct, dude. Because what's happening now is, upon the vast appeals and upheld and overturning of them, there have been periods where Dassey could have been released on bail, right?
Yeah.
But the state decided to hold him because they cannot lose the foothold that they have in the Dassey case. If Dassey somehow gets out of prison, then the Avery case really begins to crumble, right? Because at the end of the day, there are a few key things that they have, and Dassey's confession is the number one smoking gun. And if that's not there, now things are really on the bad term for the state.
And there's nothing that there is other pieces of evidence that would keep him in there for a longer process.
But it would certainly
it would put a big
possibly
dent.
a new trial.
Yeah, it would put a big dent in Avery's case.
I agree. So, yeah, guys, send us your Making a Murder stuff. Nick and I always want to talk about it. We're both hugely into it. I've told you guys before that I'm into a ton of documentaries on there. I actually just started watching a new one, and it's really good. I forget the name of it real quick, so I want to pull it up. I forgot to write it down. But it's a short one. The episodes are about a half hour. I believe it's called Time. Let me just make sure.
What's it about?
So it's about a guy. It's called Time. It's the Khalif Browder story. So it's very recent. It just happened starting in 2010 up until now. And Khalif Browder is a citizen from New York City. He lived in the Bronx, and he got convicted, or he actually didn't get convicted. He got arrested at the age of 16 for allegedly stealing a bag off of somebody that had a lot of valuables in it. And he couldn't make bail, so he was in Rikers Island. And in the state of New York, you can be treated as an adult at 16. So he was at Rikers Island, which is obviously a famous, really tough penal institution, right? So he's at Rikers Island. He can't make bail, awaiting his trial. And he was there for over 3 years. And he actually ends up getting exonerated and released, found innocent, but spent all this time in jail for nothing. And it's about his story. So about 3 episodes in, there's 6. They're not very long. I'm like halfway through the third. It's very interesting. So I recommend checking that out if you like the Making a Murderer and the Evil Genius and the that kind of stuff. This is a pretty good one too.
If you watch documentaries, it's pretty hard to not go on the internet and find out what happened.
Yeah, it's part of it,
Like,
dude. It's like a whole thing.
Because with the Making a Murderer thing, at the second to last episode, I'm expecting for the last episode as like kind of the finale. I'm expecting Dassey to get out, and that's only because I didn't go on and like look up what happened. So when he didn't get out, I'm like, that's it.
I know.
Like there's no finale.
No, and they brought it up pretty close to real time, right? They ended that in July, and they released it in what, October?
Yeah.
So or September? Yeah.
Oh, there's definitely more coming.
They brought it up pretty good.
But have you watched? There's one, The Night Of. Did you watch The Night Of? It's not a documentary. It's a fictional thing, but it's kind of like how you can get tripped up in the legal system, and this kid like went to jail for all this stuff that he didn't do, and they kind of piece it together. You didn't see that on HBO? That's a good one to watch. That was actually it might have made like my top 5 for good shows to watch.
Really? So,
yeah, and they on like an HBO type series. It was really good.
Speaking of
it.
HBO, George just chimed in. He said the Seahawks are rolling.
Yeah, but not so much on the Patriots.
So, did you see that they just released the cast for True Detective 3? Did you watch the first 2 True Detectives?
Yes. The first one was great.
Amazing.
The second one was the worst piece of crap I've ever
terrible.
watched.
You know what was
my
a shame
entire
about
life.
the second one? Everybody used to rag on Colin Farrell. I thought he carried that show. Like, if he wasn't there, it would have been terrible. He carried the show. Vince Vaughn was terrible.
No, they were both terrible.
No, Colin
Farrell
was
such a joke. His character was such a joke with the bolo tie and the quiet talking. Everything was quiet. Every scene was a very dramatic
I'm pumped for True Detective 3 though. That'll be
terrible,
good.
Dude. The second episode or the second season was so bad. It was
horrendous.
It's my number 1 worst show that I've ever.
They killed off the best actor in like the 3rd episode.
Who was that?
It was Taylor Kitsch was in there, and he was the wild card. Remember the crazy?
Yeah.
And they kill him off in like the 3rd episode.
The Vince Vaughn's girl was the worst.
The whole Vince Vaughn.
He was the worst.
Terrible. Dude.
Colin Farrell was the worst.
Colin
it was
Farrell
terrible. Don't ever watch it.
Colin Farrell was good.
I'll watch season 3.
That's it, guys. That was a long one, Nick. We had a lot to say.
There's more to come next week.
So I didn't get your comment on this song. Do you remember this song?
Was this in like a James Bond movie?
I feel like it might have been.
It's like Madonna.
Madonna and JT.
Yeah. This is James Bond. Not a fan.
You don't like the song?
Nah, next week I'm gonna pick the
Nick's
song.
gonna pick the song. I like this song.
All right.
That's it, everybody. Listen, thanks for tuning in. Of course, big thanks to all the partners. Make sure you check out the UMPR Flag Football website if you're interested. If you need merchandise, hit us up. We will let you guys know about the next live show. But as always, we appreciate everybody hopping on, sharing the videos. Once again, if you don't already subscribe on YouTube or the iTunes podcast application, please take 2 seconds next time you're on your smartphone and just click that subscribe button when you're listening to the podcast. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps us out. That's all I got.
Go Patriots, go Seahawks. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.
And go Eagles tomorrow night.